Hello and welcome to all normal people and leftists as well. My name is Keri Smith. You are watching a live episode of Deprogrammed. This is a show where we dissect social justice ideology, woke ideology, which I was in. I was a member of that cult for 20 years. And our live shows, Mondays and Fridays, sometimes I have guests and sometimes I just pick a topic and we go with that. People on the left, people who are in the woke cult, people who are woke adjacent, you are very welcome to be here. Some of you have left that cult as well and are regular community members. Good to see you guys. Today we're going to be talking about, well, first, a couple things. Tomorrow I am going to be in Dallas. So if you're in Dallas for Fan Expo and for Rippaverse and FNT and the Geeks and Gamers meetup, I'm going to be there. I thought I might have to work, but I'm off tomorrow, so I'm going. And I know I'm going to get to see some of you guys. That's going to be exciting. The other thing is, thank you to everyone who joined us for book club last night. We read and discussed The Queering of the American Child by Logan Lansing and James Lindsay. I highly recommend this book. I'm going to be talking about it a little bit today, as well as I'm going to be talking about the book that we did a couple months ago, our last book club book, which was Critical Dilemma by Neil Shimby and Pat Sawyer. It was great. We're getting these off the ground again, and I'm really grateful for the guys who were there. You gave me a lot to think about. Our next book, let me put this up on the screen. Our next book is going to be, we're taking a departure from, detailing the woke stuff, and we're going to be going back in time, and we're going to be we're going to be reading some history. Here, do I have this? Yeah. Okay. Our next book, I'm so excited about this one. We're doing this on July 18th, which is a Thursday, 6:00 Central. If you want to be a part of this book club, email me at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com and just say book club in the subject. Tell me which book club you want to be a part of. Make sure you say the Ben Franklin one, and I'll get you the Zoom link. It's a private book club, so at some point we might decide to put them online, but right now it's I kind of like having it's private so people feel comfortable being on camera and discussing and not holding anything back. So Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, this is an excellent book and it's not boring. I can promise you, I was amazed. So I hope you'll join us for that. So that's going to be in July. Okay. Let me get that removed. I think that's stop sharing. There we go. Okay. So those are the announcements. This book, for those of you who didn't join us, I'm going to talk about it a little bit today. And I hope to have Logan and James on the show to discuss it with us at some point, to also give a concise summary of it. The book is amazing. So if you read along with Critical Dilemma, let me just tell you, first of all, thank you, Mario. Mario says the book clubs are a lot of fun, guys. More y'all need to mark your calendar for them. Yeah, I need to also promote them better. So July 18th, Ben Franklin. Okay, so this book that we did last time it's a longer book. This is Critical Dilemma, Neil Shimby and Pat Sawyer. Now, this book is from a Christian perspective. It's dismantling all of social justice ideology, all of woke. It's dismantling it, explaining what it is, each part of it. And then from a Christian perspective, saying this is what Christians believe. This is why these two ideologies are incompatible. And here are some steps on how we can move forward and challenge this from a Christian perspective. This is an excellent book for Christians and even for non-believers. We had some non-believers who read this and got a lot from it, especially the first half of the book, which is about laying out what social justice ideology is. They call it critical social theory. I think critical social justice. They came up with their own acronym for it. This one, the one we discussed last night, The Queering of the American Child by Logan Lansing and James Lindsay. This one is specifically about the queer theory part of woke, the queer theory part of social justice. So it's very focused on that specific part. It's not as long as the other one. and it's not coming from any point of view. It's not coming from a, James Lindsay's an atheist. It's not coming from a, like the other one's coming from a Christian point of view and taking it apart. This is just laying out the facts of what this is and why we're seeing this insanity around us in society now. And so one of the things this book does, which I think is great, is, oh, hello, Imagine. Thank you for the super chat for $2. Hello, the lovely Keri Smith. Hope you're well. I hope you're well also. Welcome. So one of the things this book does is it divides up queer theory in a way so you can understand it. They basically say, look, and I've talked about this a little bit on the show before, where I've talked about there are the theorists, there are the people writing the social justice theory, the critical theory, the queer theory, the feminist theory. Those people, the theorists, those are the engineers of this whole belief system, right? Those are the architects of it. And then below them, you have the people who are spreading it. I was one of those people spreading it. You have the people who picked it up. I picked it up at Duke University in the late 1990s. I graduated in 2000. And I picked it up then and I took it into my career. And almost everyone else, all of my other friends did as well. They took it into their fields of work. Like I took it into the entertainment field. I had friends who took it into journalism. I had friends who took it into their medical career, friends who took it into social media companies that they worked at, big social media companies, educating kids. So we were sort of indoctrinated with this belief system to take it out into the world. So that's that second layer, right? And then the third layer are all the people that we spread it to. And these are the I would say like the mostly like normie people who've just picked it up because now it's the dominant religion, it's the dominant belief system. And on the show, I've previously called them like the people who've picked it up on the street or picked it up, oh, hold on. I'm so sorry, guys. Is the microphone okay? Because it says my microphone's not working and I think this is bad sound because this mic isn't working and it's using my other one. You tell me. If it's worth me fixing, I'll fix the mic. And if not, I'll just keep going. You hear me okay? Okay, I'll just keep going. Unless the people want me to fix it. Okay, good. We'll keep going. So the people who've picked it up on the street level, or they've picked it up on Tumblr, or they've picked it up on their Facebook moms group, they've picked it up in culture at large, like the TikTok woke, those people. Once you get down to that level of woke, they don't know anything about the theory. And that's why when you point out correctly, hey, this belief system that you have, this is based in Marxism and postmodern. Like this has roots in Marxism. This is just a mutated kind of Marxism. That's why they look at you funny. They don't even, first of all, this level of woke, the street level, most of the people who are in it, they don't know anything about Marxism either. Like they haven't read that theory either. So they don't actually know where any of this comes from. And but they have been programmed by the second group, which is what I was in. They have been programmed by that group with all these phrases and things to say when they're in a discussion, things to repeat. So they are programmed to scoff at you when you say that, when you point out that it's Marxist. They are programmed to laugh at you and scoff at you and react as if they think you're stupid, even though they're so stupid they don't even know what Marxism is, and they don't know what queer theory is, and they don't know where any of this stuff that they're saying comes from. They've just been giving these responses to do, when they're triggered. When they hear a trigger word, then they spit out this, right? And so they break it down in this book very well. Here's what they call those groups. So they call the queer theorists the inner circle. And these, again, are the people who are writing the theory. This is where all of these beliefs come from. This is where this whole belief system comes from, the queer theorists, many of whom were avowed Marxists. It comes from Marxist theory. That's where it comes from. So in the book, they alternately call it queer theory and queer Marxism because it is Marxism. It's an identity-based kind of Marxism rather than a class-based kind of Marxism. So they have the inner circle. Then they have the inner school, the queer activists. Those are the people like myself. Those are the people who we read some of the theory. We were educated at these elite universities where we were indoctrinated with this stuff. And then we've read some of the theory. We go out and we've gone out into the world and we've taken it with us, which we were commanded to do. And that's part of it, by the way. Most critical theory, they point this out in the book. So theory, most theory is just descriptive. It's describing, it's a theory of describing the way things are. Critical theory is different. Critical theory is, it's descriptive and prescriptive. It's descriptive in that it's describing the way things are, attempting to give a theory for this is why things are the way they are. And then it goes beyond that and it gives prescriptions. It prescribes an action, things to do. So critical theory is, this is the reason why, this is a theory why things are the way they are, because the world is a competition for power between identity groups. And there are certain groups called oppressors. Those oppressor groups have oppressed the marginalized or the oppressed groups. And we have to redistribute. Now, see, now you're getting to the prescription. They tell you this is why things are the way they are, because white people and men and straight people have ruled. They have been oppressors. They've oppressed all the other identity groups. They say this is the way things are. And then they say, and now what you have to do, what we have to do is go out into the world and change it. And here's how to do that. We have to redistribute power between these identity groups so we can all be equal. It sounds like Marxism, like a mutated kind of Marxism, because it is. Marxism was basically saying the best way to look at the world is as a competition for wealth among class groups, or the means of production, and that we need to redistribute this, the means of production and the wealth among class groups, and then we'll reach this utopia, right? So but this says no, it's about power and identity groups. We have to redistribute power among identity groups and then it'll work, right? So they call that second group the ones who've read the theory or at least have become familiar with the terms. They call, and I was in that group, they call this group the inner school or the queer activists, and they're the ones who go out into the world and like preach it. We were the evangelists, so to speak. You might almost think of it as the queer theorists being like the priests, the high priests, and we were the missionaries taking it out into the world and to every one of our careers. We were trained to be activists, critical theory activists, social justice activists. College, instead of teaching us how to think, taught us what to think and how to be in the world, to be activists, to change the world, to take it into our career fields. And so now we're reaping the fruits of that because we did take it into our career fields. I took it into entertainment. I managed comedians and I produced television shows, comedy specials, helped clients put out books, go on tours, national tours, TV shows that were woke, that were pushing social justice ideology through entertainment. That was my part. I was doing my part. Other people took it into their field in education. They took it into the schools. And this book is very concerned with pointing that out, how queer theory was taken into kindergarten through 12th grade. It was never there before my generation took it there. Blessedly, when I picked up this evil ideology, I picked it up in college. I picked it up at Duke. I had never encountered it K through 12. I'm like the tail end of Gen X. So it wasn't in K through 12 at that time for the most part. Now it's in every state, red states and blue states, which they point out in public schools. We took it into all of the fields we went into: politics, media, entertainment, journalism. And now you've got this third group, which in the book, I'm trying to remember what they call this third group. It's the group I call the TikTok woke. or the Tumblr woke. They call them the outer school. And the outer school is like, I think it's probably the most of the people who are in woke, they're in that outer school. They're the TikTok woke, they're the Tumblr woke, they're the Facebook moms group woke. They've never interacted with the theory. They've never read it. They have no idea where this ideology comes from. In fact, they don't think they have an ideology. If you say, a lot of them, if you say to them, I don't think you're evil. I'm trying to point out to you, I think your belief system's evil. I think social justice ideology, woke ideology, this identity Marxism, queer Marxism, I think this is evil. If you try to say that to them, they're like, I don't have a belief system. I'm just like it's like a fish not seeing the water. That's how they are. Like, what water? But that's the group, I think, and in my experience, that you can wake up if you point out if you help them see where these ideas come from. And this book does a great job of that. So a couple of things. Let's see, where should I start? Since this is June, Gay Pride Month, right? Gay Pride Month. It's pushed on us incessantly from every part of government, every corporation, except in Muslim countries. You'll notice that all the corporations don't put the pride flag on their Twitter accounts, their X accounts in the Muslim countries. I wonder why that is. Maybe there's a dominant religion there that would not allow it. Maybe there's already a dominant religion in that country, those countries. Could that be it? But here, woke is the dominant religion. And you can see that by looking around at what are the holidays that we make a big deal over. What are the holidays? My pastor, Bradley Helgerson at Church on the Square in Georgetown, he talks about this. Like, if you want to know what religion is guiding a culture, what faith, what belief system, look at the holidays, look at the parades, look at the things that are celebrated, the cultural things. What do we celebrate here? Oh, everybody put the new pride flag on your social media this month, right? And the pride flag keeps getting updated so much so that I've covered this in previous episodes. I just, at this point, you know what that flag is? And so many of my friends who are gay or lesbian or who have gender dysphoria, who are, get called trans, the based friends, they're so sick of it. And they're like, this flag isn't even about us. Like, what is this? You know why that flag is? What that flag is, essentially, it's the new communist flag. That's what it is. Queer theory. Let's get to the theory. Where did this come from? I'm going to point out why I say it's the communist flag. So I'm just going to read to you some of the book. There's so much stuff in here that's great. And I hope that by reading some of it, you will go and pick up a copy of this book. Queer theory basically wants to destroy everything that is considered normal, everything that is a norm. They're very open about this. It's not a secret. Hold on, oh my goodness, this is so good. I'm going to read you the beginning of chapter 1. I'm going to skip the intro. There's a lot of great stuff in there too. But let's go to chapter 1, the Windsor School. They start off with this example that makes it really just a good illustration. The Windsor School. The Windsor School is an elite all-girls preparatory school in Boston, Massachusetts. At Windsor, parents pay $56,100 a year to prepare their girls to, quote, pursue their aspirations and contribute to the world, end quote. For over 100 years, Windsor has offered exceptional learning opportunities to young women. However, everything changed in 2021 when Windsor pursued a radical agenda and the girls suddenly disappeared at a girls' school. It is not normal to see all girls disappear from an all-girls school, but that's precisely what happened at Windsor. In 2021, the school released a 106-page document that outlined a renewed commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. If you see DEI, that's one of the cult phrases immediately. Again, I'm keeping in mind that there are lots of people on the left who watch my channel, some of you who start off hate watching, but some of you who are genuinely curious and want to know, like, what happened to Keri? I get these messages sometimes. What happened to you? If you're new, if you're still in that woke world, or if you're on the outskirts of it, or if you're, and you're in the TikTok woke group, you're casually woke, you may not know this, that yes, every single time you see DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you are looking at cult language. That tells me right away, whoever's using that, whatever organization, whether it's a government organization or a hobby group or a Facebook group or whatever it is, your church, whoever is using that has been captured by this ideology. So Windsor School put out their DEI statement. This commitment included a review of Windsor's policies, procedures, practices, and professional development training. The goal was to, quote, seek a deeper understanding of the totality of our DEI practices, end quote, and to, quote, provide a roadmap to the work ahead. There's a lot of work in this religion. In fact, this is a works-based faith. If you're a Christian, that will make sense what that means. It's all, your salvation is dependent on your works. You have to do the work. But there actually is no salvation. That's the thing they don't tell you. You're never going to reach it. Okay. A central feature of that roadmap in the new DEI statement at Windsor was eliminating the use of gendered language in the school. Gendered language, by the way, is another cult phrase. The Windsor School's commitment to DEI meant that the adults in the room were no longer committed to protecting and educating girls. In practice, the commitment erased girls altogether. In Lift Every Voice, a report on diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Windsor School, Windsor's administration makes this point clear. Quote, Windsor has adopted changes to its use of gendered language and pronouns to be more inclusive. How many cult words are in there, right? Gendered language, pronouns, inclusive. External publications and communications have moved away from using she, her, and hers and your daughter, replacing the former with they, them, theirs, and the latter with your student. Because how dare you say daughter when you're talking about girls who go to an all-girls school? How dare you say she, her, or hers when you're talking about girls who go to an all-girls school? Okay, they sent this out though. We're going to say they, them, and theirs. We're going to say student. It continues. Sensitivity is also paid to family structure. In admission, for example, interviews are now called the adult family member interview instead of the parent or guardian interview. Wow. The cult language goes so deep, they're not even going to use the phrase parent or guardian anymore. Does that seem like it's an assault on the traditional family and on family roles and on the very idea of having a parent? Does it seem like it's an assault on the idea that it's normal to have a parent? Because it is. They are trying to normalize the opposite. They are trying to say, no, everyone has an adult family member. Faculty and staff are discouraged from addressing groups of students as girls or ladies. And teachers should address students by their preferred pronouns. So this was all a part of that Windsor School statement. And so the Logan Lansing, the author, wrote, how does a commitment to something like inclusion lead to the radical proposition that it's no longer okay to call girls girls at an all-girls school? Why does embracing inclusion mean it's wrong to call parents parents? It's not normal for an all-girls school to stop calling groups of young women ladies. So why did Windsor do this? So you can kind of see they're laying out in the book, how did we get here? How did we get to this place where something so absurd? And there's thousands of these absurd stories. The other book that I mentioned, Critical Dilemma, they pull out a few very great examples as well. There's so many to choose from, but they try and illustrate with anecdotes of like, here's an example of this insanity as it's functioning in society, right? So I want to get to this part. I'm going to skip ahead to the part about normalcy. Okay, here we go. So you may have known, you may have seen some of my podcast episodes with my friend Mike Harlow, who is a gay man who adamantly opposes use of the word queer. He's talked about this before, so some of this is going to sound familiar to you, and why he hates that word and why he will not use that word except to mock it. Because queer doesn't mean, and it doesn't actually have anything to do with gay, lesbian, trans, or any of the things they claim it does. They are very honest about it in some cases in queer theory, that queer means it's a political ideology. It is a cultural kind of Marxism. I'm going to read this from the book. Okay, so this again, we're reading right now an excerpt, and in a second we're going to get to critical dilemma, but I'm reading from The Queering of the American Child. So this is where they're talking about, like I mentioned before, that queer theory is both a theory and a practice. It's not just descriptive, it's also prescriptive, right? It tells you this is a theory for how and why things are, but then it tells you, and here's how you should act. Here's what you should do. Here's how to turn you into an activist. So they say queer theory is both a theory and a practice, often described as praxis. A basketball team reviews their playbook before game time. The team has a theory of how they can score more points than the opposing team. A player on this team competes at center court for a jump ball that starts the game, setting the team's theory of how they can win into practice. Queer theory works similarly. Queer activists, those who believe that queer theory is a factual description of how society works, they take their theory into the world and they agitate for social change through political activism. The basketball team's goal is to score more points. The queer activist goal is to change society. And it's not just to change society, as they detail more in the book. It is to destroy everything that is considered normal and traditional, all norms and traditions, because they consider those to be oppressive. They consider those to only be norms and traditions because of the oppressor identity groups who've made them such, that everything is socially constructed. Everything in the world is socially constructed, and there's nothing that's actually normal. Like, for example, they say heterosexuality is not normal. It's not normal, even though that's how we reproduce. It's biologically, it's very normal. They say it's not a norm, that it's the oppressor groups of like men and straight people and white people, they've made it. They've socially constructed heterosexuality to be considered the norm, but it's not naturally the norm. It shouldn't be the norm. That's what they say. That's what they believe. We've covered this on previous episodes, how some of the feminist theorists, they similarly say that all heterosexual sex is rape. That all heterosexual sex, there's something wrong with it, is bad. See, these things like go hand in hand. So much of queer theory came out of feminist theory. I'm going to continue here. So here they have a quote, and this is from let's see, I'm trying to figure out which. This is from original source material from a book called Against Common Sense, Teaching and Learning Towards Social Justice. Okay, here's an excerpt that they include. Queer activists often work, this is from the horse's mouth. This is from the woke left mouth. Queer activists often work to expose problems in the status quo and help us imagine and create more socially just alternatives. They work to change laws and policies by lobbying legislators or staging protests. They teach others to break through glass ceilings or challenge discriminatory employment or housing or healthcare practices. They organize community or social groups for political action. So it's like, it's not just a theory, it's also a practice. It's also praxis. It's also an action. It's telling you how to be in the world, how to act in the world. So then Logan Lansing, the author, continues, the practice of queer theory is called queering. The word queer in this sense is a verb. To queer is to, quote, destabilize the social, cultural, and political normalizing structures that work to solidify identities and in doing so, to skew power toward the norm. Put simply, to queer is to challenge and eliminate normalcy. Normalcy means, quote, the condition of being normal, as in usual, typical, or expected. So to queer is to challenge and eliminate the idea that anything can or should be considered normal. Now they go on, and I've got other quotes pulled up. I've got another book that we've talked about before. Oh gosh, with some awful quotes that we can go to. But let me just say this again, if you're new to all this, and let's say you're casually woke, you're in that group that they're calling the outer school. These are like what I call the TikTok woke, or the street level woke, the Facebook mom group woke, the inclusive LGBT inclusive church woke, the well-meaning, and a lot of times very well-meaning people. They want to be thought of as good people, and they go along with this because it's culturally dominant. This group of people, by the way, I think this is why it's so important to change culture, because they go wherever the culture goes. This is why you see, because this religion, woke religion, social justice religion, has become culturally dominant. This is why you see so many people leaving the churches, and they're always doing these scare articles about how, like, the number of people going to church has declined. I'm not concerned about that, because I know who's leaving. I know it's the chaff. I know it's the people who are casual, who are pretenders. They're just pretenders to whatever is culturally dominant. They're just followers. They're going to go to whatever is the norm right now. They want to fit in. They want to blend in. They're like the zebras in, that herd theory. They don't want to look different than the other zebras. They don't want to be taller than the other zebras. They don't want to get picked off. They want to be in with the group. And they're going to go to whatever's culturally dominant and the most popular thing. And so they're leaving the churches and they're going to woke, or they're turning the churches woke. I'm not concerned about that. I also know that actual sincere believers, those numbers are increasing. I know this in my gut. I know this anecdotally. I know this from people like myself, who I never thought I would be a Christian. And I know this because of people who are getting there the long, hard way. Sometimes after learning everything the hard way, finally coming to know God. And that's also happening, partially as a result of this crazy world we find ourselves in, right? So those people who are in the, the followers, they're culturally woke. They are the outer school, is what this book calls them. They're the ones who just go with the norm and they go with the flow, and they want to be thought of as good people. And this is the new religion. This is our new religion in the West, woke. And so they're going there, and they're a part of it, and they're putting the pride flags on their profiles, and they do all the woke things. They put the black square up when you got to put the black BLM square up. They have the current woke thing in their bios all the time, constant virtue signaling. I'm one of you. I'm one of the tribe. I'm one of the zebras. And again, they don't know the theory. And so one of the things that the theory says, the queer theory, the identity Marxist theory, the feminist theory, all this stuff that I read when I was in school, we've covered some of this before, but I'll say it again, and it's in this book. It's in the other book, Critical Dilemma. They believe, as I said, that the world is best viewed as this competition for power among identity groups, and that every identity group can be described as either an oppressor group or an oppressed group. And they also interchangeably use the words privileged group or marginalized group, right? And so you can think of how they do this, even if you're new to all this, you can think of this pretty quickly. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, they say men are the oppressor, women are oppressed. They say white people are the oppressor and people of color are the oppressed. They say straight people are the oppressor and gay people are oppressed. And they've now extended it beyond that into all these other identities, because think about it. You're in a belief system that gives you social currency, that gives you power. If you're in, the more of these marginalized or oppressed groups you can say you're in. And so now you've got, you've also got, cis, they've come up with a fake word, cis, which is just normal people. That cis people are the oppressor and trans people are the oppressed. They say average weight people are the oppressor and fat people are the oppressed. This is true. Fat studies is a thing now. It's another category of identity, your size. People of size, that's the language they use. If you go into these fat acceptance groups, these body positivity groups, they've all been taken over and corrupted by social justice and woke cult language, just like feminism, just like LGBT groups, just like the civil rights movement. It's like the husk of all these different identity movements is being operated like a puppet by identity Marxism. So fat studies, so the fat positivity movement, body positivity movement, all of that's been corrupted. I have an interview on this channel if you're interested about that. Starzan, she was in the fat positivity, body positivity part of woke. She was in that part of the cult. And that interview is amazing. She talks about the cult and everything they push. They push all the same stuff. Intersectionality. They say losing weight is racist. They're not joking. They say it's racist. It's giving into the whites, cis heteropatriarchy to lose weight. It's giving into the oppressors. This is all real. They believe this stuff. So you've got that category of identity. You've got, mental health justice. That's another category now. They say if you don't have any mental health problems or mental health disorders, that you're the oppressor. And if you have mental health disorders, then you are the oppressed. And so this provides an incentive for young people who get into this cult to not do anything to get over their mental issues, because why would they? It gives them victim status. It gives them oppressed status. It gives them more social currency. They put it in their Twitter bios. They're like, I have borderline personality disorder and I ain't trying to get rid of it, am I? Like, I'm depressed and anxious all the time. Why? Because that means they're in more marginalized groups. If they can claim they're queer, look at all the straight girls who are saying they're queer, right? But I'm queer. Why? Gives you social currency. You're in a marginalized group now, right? So one of these groups, one of these identity categories is age. And as both of these books point out, yes, queer theory and feminist theory both explicitly argue that children are an oppressed group because we are not treating them as full, complete humans with bodily autonomy, that we need to get rid of things like age of consent, because otherwise we're oppressing kids if we don't treat them like we do adults. You can imagine where this has led in queer theory and to the arguments being put forth about things that are rightly considered immoral and unethical and illegal. And that includes all the stuff we're seeing now where you've got people, you've got soccer mom, Facebook group mom, woke women out there now saying, sure, children can consent to cutting off their breasts and their genitals. Sure, children are capable of consenting to that. They're full human beings just like adults. They know what they're consenting to. Yeah, they can't consent to drinking yet, or smoking cigarettes, or driving a car, or voting, or buying a gun, or having sex with adults. Oh, but they're working on it. The queer theory says. Let's read some of it. I've got some of it marked in both books. I'm going to jump to Critical Dilemma for a second. So Critical Dilemma, this is the one that we did in book club a couple months ago. This is Neil Shimby and Pat Sawyer, and in their queer theory section, they've got some of this. They have it another place too, but I'm going to read from here. So this is from the horse's mouth, from queer theory, and they've quoted some excerpts. Jagos, yeah, here we go. And they give a trigger warning. I'll give a content warning. YouTube might pull this video down. It's funny, they can teach this stuff. They can push it on kids, but then if you read it, it's like, oh, you can't talk about that. YouTube will take the video down. So here, this is from Queer Theory. Variously referred to as intergenerational sex, child abuse, and man-boy love and pedophilia, even the semantic continuum of terms used to describe the concept evokes a variety of positions in a debate structured overwhelmingly by such issues as consent, power, and the legal definition of childhood. The issue of intergenerational sex, that's what this guy's calling it, that's what this queer theorist is calling it, intergenerational sex, continues to be debated vigorously in many gay and lesbian communities. The protection of children is deemed by some to be ethically crucial to the development of gay identity, but is dismissed by others as erotic hysteria. What is the status of different and arbitrary age of consent laws? Do children have a sexuality and a right to sexual agency? I told you it's revolting. Why is age, unlike, say, race or class, understood as a sexualized power differential protected by law? See how they put intersectionality, says they put all these oppressed, all these identity categories on the same line. They look at them all the same way. So they're like, hey, we should treat age like race and sex, right? Why is age, unlike, say, race or class, understood as a sexualized power differential protected by law? Is it possible to eroticize children in an ethical way? That's what this queer theorist says. I just want you to think about that sentence and the absolute evil that we've allowed into all of our institutions. So much so that we see it represented with this stupid pride flag on cereal boxes and Pop-Tarts and at the Petco store, and this is what they're advocating for. This is what's at the end of that rainbow of queer theory. Is it possible to eroticize children in an ethical way? These are questions commonly raised. Commonly in queer theory, yeah. That's what they're saying, commonly raised. And by no means yet resolved in the controversy over intergenerational sex. I'm going to read another one of these since we're on to this now. And again, there's a ton of this. This is just one quote. I've got others marked that we can look at of this filth. This is what you guys are pushing. Let me, I've had several people on the left reach out to me this particular Pride season, and I'm grateful for it. I'm glad you do, because at least that shows maybe some degree of curiosity. I've been, probably because I've been a little more forceful this Pride season, I notice other people have too. This is degeneracy that's being celebrated this month. This is perversion. This is not gay and lesbian. This has nothing to do with that. There are gay and lesbian organizations protesting Pride Month that are saying the same things I'm saying. There are based trans people, people with gender dysphoria, saying the same things I'm saying. And there's more of them than ever speaking out this Pride season to say, hey, this is wrong. This is perverted. This is degeneracy. What are we doing? Why is this being pushed on us like a religion from government, from pop culture, in our schools? Why is this being pushed on kids? Why do you want kids to see adult nudity at pride parades? Why do you want them to see drag queens? It's adult entertainment. There are drag queens like Kitty Demure out there saying, hey, straight wine moms, why are you bringing your kids to my show? It's freaking weird and gross and not appropriate. And you people I'm getting a little upset, I guess, righteously so, though, about some of these casually woke people who've reached out to me this Pride season, because more of us are pushing back this Pride season. I'm commenting on a lot more than I have previous years. And they've asked me, why do you hate gay and lesbian people? It's so stupid. You're stupid. I haven't been this on the nose or blunt in my responses to you. I've actually taken great care to try and explain it in a loving way when it's one-on-one, because I do want them to listen. And like I said, I do think there's a bit of curiosity in there. But if you're asking a person who opposes pride why they hate gay and lesbian people, why they hate trans people, you are so far off the mark. Like, you are so lost. It's like it's like the cave where I don't know how, like, where to start. I guess a good place to start is by challenging them, which I have done, and saying, "Hey, that's weird you think that. I know lots of gay and lesbian organizations and people who also speak against this stuff and agree that it has nothing to do gay and lesbian people. And here's some of them if you'd like to hear interviews with them. And I've even offered to one of my friends, to his credit, is still my Facebook friend, but someone I knew in my old life who works in entertainment. And, I even offered, hey, as a curious person, someone who works in entertainment, maybe you might want to get to know some of these people. I can probably arrange for some of them to talk to you if you're interested, because apparently you don't know. So that's like a good place to start. But another good place to start, of course, they write all those people off as internally homophobic, which is how they write off any woman who doesn't agree with woke. Oh, we're internally misogynistic. Or any Black person who doesn't agree with woke. Oh, they're internally racist. They have these cult magic phrases they use. But I have offered to make those introductions for people, and I mean it. But the other thing I can do, and I think we can do, is to point out the theory, is to tell them explicitly where their ideology comes from. Help them to see the water. If they are fish in water, help them to see the water and to put it into terms they can understand. And both of these books are excellent. If you are out there, if you are a joyful warrior and you are pushing back against this cultural rot and this cultural decay, I don't care if you're a believer or non-believer, you should get Critical Dilemma, even though it's coming from a Christian point of view, because this one is dense and has a lot of resources, and it's divided up into really going over all of woke, all of social justice ideology, each of the different identity movements. And then this one gets really specifically into the one that is currently seeming to be the one that's doing the most destruction on the nuclear family, on all of our traditional norms, on normalcy itself. And so these books are necessary. I'll put links below to both of them. But if you understand this stuff, somebody was mentioning James Lindsay in the chat. James Lindsay's a great resource. If you're interested, if you're new here and you want to go see, I've done several conversations with him. There was one I did with him and my pastor, which is fascinating because we were talking about looking at social justice and woke ideology, not just as a cultural war, but as a spiritual war. I think you can find that one if you look up, is woke a spiritual war, with James Lindsay. And he and my pastor agreed on so much, and Lindsay, of course, is an atheist, and it was amazing to see how much overlap there was there in acknowledgement of what's happening. Because the other thing this book lays out that's fascinating and interesting is Marxism as a theology. A lot of people think, and it points out, I think of it mostly, I speak of it mostly as I do speak of it as a worldview and a belief system, but as also related to like economic policy as an economic system. And it's really showing like, no, it's a theology that then leads to an economic system like communism, but it's a theology. There's this stuff in here about Marx talking about how humans are the thing that differentiates us between us and animals is that we are creators, and we can create and we can shape the environment around us. And I would agree with him on that. As a Christian, I believe God created us to create, to be cultivators of culture. My pastor, Bradley Helgerson, has several sermons about this. He put us in a garden to cultivate, the garden of Eden. And then we're to cultivate culture outside of like growing things and making things. So I agree with Marx on this. But then he goes further and he says, we're making our very selves. We are creating our very selves. And that eventually we will get to a place in history. This is insane to me. And this was one of the kind of wake up calls I had in reading this book. One of the gems was where it talks about how he thought we would get to the end of history when we got to a place where man was nature and nature was man, where we looked out at the world and everything we created, and it was all like us, like it reflected back on us. And that then, get this, wait, let me just read this part. Logan Lanson summarizes it, this part. I'm just going to read it straight from him because I can't say it better than how he did in the book. Okay, so listen to this. For Marx, the march to realize our humanity progresses inevitably. Eventually, we will reach the end of history when we have transformed nature to such an extent that it is indistinguishable from us. Okay. Man will be nature and nature will be man. When we look out at and into the world, the only thing reflecting back at us will be our creativity. The only thing reflecting back on us will be ourselves. Sounds super narcissistic and Satanist, right? Our collectivized consciousness will become one with itself. What's in our heads will already reflect back at us in the world. And we will think and all we will see is we are man, creator. History will end because we will have realized our full human nature as creative and collective beings. We will collectively become God. And in so doing, we will remember that we were already God and have been all along. As Marx himself suggests, the goal of critiquing all of the religions is to make way for man to move around himself as his own true son. And there's a quote. There's a quote here from Marx. The criticism of religion disillusions man. The criticism of religion disillusions man so that he will think, act, and fashion his reality like a man who has discarded his illusions and regained his senses, so that he will move around himself as his own true son. Religion is only the illusory son, which revolves around man as long as he does not revolve around himself. So it's really about like liberating ourselves to be our own God and to worship ourselves. This is the theology of Marxism, says Logan Lansing. There's so much in this book, and it's a pretty concise book. That part, thinking about it as a theology, was new for me. Thinking about it, it really hit me differently reading it this way. I appreciate Lansing for that alone. For that alone, this book is worth it. Also, let me see. Did YouTube take us down? I saw somebody say that said we're being throttled. Did they take this stream down? I hope not. Well, we are simulcasting on Rumble if we get taken down. I'm going to pause for just a second to read some of these chats. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super chats. Mark for $2. Thank you, Mark. He says the worst facet was their plan to undo kids' innocence. Oh, yes. And they actively say in queer theory that is their goal, is to capture the kids, destroy kids' innocence, that kids are blank slates, that we can socially construct them with whatever we want. We can queer them. This is not us saying this. This is what they say, queer theorists. G-Man for $2. Happy Pride Month, everybody. G-Man. Thank you for the super chat. Randy Wallen for $10. Thank you, Randy. Communism, nothing less. The gulag awaits if we allow it to continue. They are inside the gates. They are inside the gates. Thank you, Randy, for supporting the channel. Dan says no. The video's still going. It just got slower. Well, I don't know why that happened, but I'm sorry. Let me see if I can pick another part. There's so much in here that I want to tell you guys. I just really want you to go buy this and read it. Well, here's some more. Here's some more about queer theory. Okay. Listen to this. Oh my goodness. Well, okay, here we go. Queer activists. Again, this is from the book we're reading today, from the book Critical Dilemma, which is by Neil Shimby and Pat Sawyer, and also from the book The Queering of the American Child, which is by Logan Lansing with James Lindsay. Queer activists have transformed educational policies, practices, and content to align with and forward and put into practice their radical cult religion. They have repurposed education to queer the healthy minds and bodies of normal kids. In fact, they have gone so far as to insist that there are no truly normal kids because there is no such thing as true normal. Remember, everything normal is just dictated as such by the oppressor groups. That's what they say. There is no such thing as true normal, and thus that all kids, therefore all people, are intrinsically queer and waiting to find out. For example, queer education activist Lindsay Amer posted to Twitter in 2022. Here's a quote from a queer activist. Quote, when I talk about queer, trans, and non-binary kids, I'm not just talking about kids who currently identify as such. I'm talking about all kids. And he put that in all caps, by the way, because all kids are queer. Queer as in different, non-normative, and pre-structural. That's why kids are vital to liberation movements. That's the quote from a modern day queer activist. So Logan continues, queer educators are not concerned with teaching kids to read, write, do mathematics, or become normal adults. Queer educators are only concerned with radicalizing children, all children. Queer theory teaches kids to denounce our current society, all standards, rules, definitions, categories, and traditions at every conceivable level, while simultaneously announcing new queer possibilities. Queer possibilities, guys, as stated by Jose Esteban Munoz in his 2009 book, Cruising Utopia. Here's a quote from that book. Straight from the horse's mouth, we're reading from the queer theorist's mouth here. Queerness is not here yet. Queerness is an ideality. Put another way, we are not yet queer. We may never touch queerness, but we can feel it as the warm illumination of a horizon imbued with potentiality. We have never been queer, yet queerness exists for us as an ideality that can be distilled from the past and used to imagine a future. The future is queerness's domain. Queerness is a structuring and educated mode of desiring that allows us to see and feel beyond the quagmire of the present. The here and the now is a prison house. It's laughable, except this is what is influencing our president, all of our branches of government, our Supreme Court decisions, the everything that's being taught in schools, all of the curriculum for kids, for kindergartners. I mean, here's another quote from queer theorists. Actually, before I get to that, I'll read the little forward part from the author, Logan Lansing. Queer activists have transformed education's purpose, methods, and content to push kids to become queer activists themselves. They have determined that the best way to do this is to teach kids to queer themselves, to teach kids to destabilize their minds and bodies by deconstructing their identity until they become queer, which is a political cult identity that has nothing to do with sex, gender, or sexuality. In the words of a world-renowned queer theorist, David Halperin, queer is, quote, so we're hearing from the horse's mouth, queer is an identity without an essence, end quote. Logan says, whoa. In full context, he gives away the game. Queer is a wholly political stance against normalcy and legitimacy and has little or nothing to do with homosexuality itself. Here's what he writes. From the horse's mouth, from David Halperin, queer theorist's mouth, unlike gay identity, which, though deliberately proclaimed in an act of affirmation, is nonetheless rooted in the positive fact of homosexual object choice, queer identity need not be grounded in any positive truth or in any stable reality. As the very word implies, queer does not name some kind of natural, some natural kind, does not name some natural kind or refer to some determinate object. It doesn't refer to anything. It acquires its meaning from its oppositional relation to the norm. Queer is by definition whatever is at odds with the normal, the legitimate, and the dominant. There is nothing in particular to which it necessarily refers. It is an identity without an essence, end quote. That's from the horse's mouth from queer theorist David Halperin. There's another disgusting quote here from Gail Rubin, a famous queer activist, about how, oh my goodness, look at this one. This is about, again, about intergenerational sex and how children are an oppressed group and we need to treat them like adults. And she says, quote, it's easy to see someone like Livingston as a victim of the child porn wars. It's harder for most people to sympathize with actual boy lovers like she does. Like communists and homosexuals in the 1950s, boy lovers are so stigmatized that it's difficult to find defenders for their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. Consequently, the police have feasted on them. Local police, the FBI, and watchdog postal inspectors have joined to build a huge apparatus whose sole aim is to wipe out the community of men who love underage youth. This is real stuff. These are pillars of queer theory, of everything that's normalized today, right? Continues, in 20 years or so, when some of the smoke has cleared, it will be much easier to show that these men have been the victims of a savage and undeserved witch hunt. She's talking about pedophiles here. A lot of people will be embarrassed by their collaboration with this persecution, but it will be too late to do much good for these men who have spent their lives in prison, end quote. The goal, now this is Logan Lansing, the author, continuing, the goal of queer education is to radically deconstruct a child into a, quote, fluid, permanently shifting, and unintelligible object. This is from queer theory. He's quoting from queer theory. Object of revolution. Parents must understand what queer theory is doing to their children. Queer activists know that parents will end this madness the second they realize their children are in danger, which is why queer activists intentionally subvert parental authority and teach children to expect parental rejection of their new queer identities. They, like a cult, program these kids in gay straight alliances. They at some schools now they're giving out directives to the teachers, don't out your students' queerness to their parents. Don't tell them if you got a kid in your class who wants to transition, keep it a secret. Keep it a secret from the parents. They have policies now in some states saying that they're going to keep it a secret from the parents. They renamed some of the gay straight alliances to other names to hide the fact of what it is, like to try and hide it from parents so their kids can, tell them what after school group they're in. These are cult practices. Grooming. This is why James Lindsay often calls it grooming. It is grooming. It's ideological grooming. The purposes of separating the child from parents, from the people in their life who love them, who are supposed to be their protectors, getting them alone so they can manipulate them and exploit them. I'm going to take a quick break from this stuff. I know it's really gross. I know some people were like, I can't hear any more of this. I'm not going to read. Actually, I do have one more excerpt I want to read from Queer Theory. I'll just do one more. G-Man for $5. Oh no, look at your avatars. They keep getting more queer. They keep getting more perverted. For $5 says, I'm off to bleach my O-ring while the sun is still high. See y'all at the parade. Bye. So wrong. So wrong. So wrong. That is completely what that's the world they want us living in right now. Tim Gibson, I appreciate you. Thank you for the super sticker for $20. I can't see what the sticker is here on StreamYard, but I hope it was something super normal. Mario Nace. Hey, Mario. Mary was in book club yesterday. Member for 4 months. I appreciate it. It says, if only she had the same sympathy for the PDF files for normal people as well. Oh yeah, all that sympathy that Ruben has for child molesters. None for normal people. Okay, let me show you this. This is another queer theorist. I thought I would bring this one up because I've covered this one before. Because I have an interview with a music group in the UK called Whom by Fire. That episode is called Cancel This, Whom by Fire, if you want to go check it out. And they are one of several different musicians or music groups that I've interviewed who've been canceled for being normal, for having normal opinions. And they got canceled from several gigs and have been piled on and faced a relentless assault because one of the members of the band objected to a pride event that featured a book reading by this pedophile. Okay, this book by Mario Malelli. I'm going to share it. Queer theorist Mario Malelli. And if I'm saying his name wrong, I don't care, but you can tell me how to really say it. And this is an article praising the book, by the way. The book is called Towards a Gay Communism. Pretty on the nose when they come right out and say it. I've got another clip queued up that's on the nose. Don't let me forget, we're going to watch that clip. But this book, here's an article praising it. It says, the headline, the title of this article is, I Keep My Treasure in My Arse, which is a quote from the book. Mario Malelli's Gay Communism by Tim Dean. So it goes on to talk about the book and what's so great about it. And let me just read an excerpt of this. Malé, is that how I should say it? Malé articulated something that has mostly got lost in contemporary queer theory, the foundational significance of sex. He put his finger on the cultural antipathy towards anal sex, an antipathy that the AIDS epidemic intensified, that Leo Bersani analyzed 10 years after Malé, and that paradoxically, queer theory's newfound respectability has compounded. Quote, now this is from the book, Towards a Gay Communism. Quote, what in homosexuality particularly horrifies homo normalists, the policeman of the hetero-capitalist system, is being effed in the arse. I'm not going to use the word, but you can read it right there on screen. Effed in the arse. And this can only mean that one of the most delicious bodily pleasures, anal intercourse, is itself a significant revolutionary force. The thing that we queens are so greatly put down for contains a large part of our subversive gay potential. I keep my treasure in my arse, but then my arse is open to everyone. So then this article goes on to, that's an excerpt from the book, goes on to talk about how great the book is. And the most marvelous thing it says about him, about Malé, is that he really seems to mean that his arse is open to actually everyone. And he does, because if you continue that section of what he's talking about with sex, He says, here, let's continue. Based on a liberationist model of queer sexuality, Millay drastically redefines communism as, quote, the rediscovery of bodies and their fundamental communicative function, their polymorphous potential for love. And then it's talking about having sex with egalitarian sex. Here we go. And this almost Bataille-like communication of material forms, human corporality enters into egalitarian relations of sex with all worldly beings, including, quote from the book, including children and new arrivals of every kind, dead bodies. So they're talking about necrophilia there. Animals. So they're talking about raping animals. Plants, things, flowers, turds. They're talking about feces. It goes on and on and on. I'll stop there. It is pretty disgusting. That gives you a good idea of what's in that book. That book was being read at a Pride event, and the band Whom by Fire objected to that book by a queer communist pedophile being read. And so for that, the sin of opposing that book, their band has been called, homophobic and transphobic and canceled from shows and harassed online, and just, the woke left, the people that want to be good people, but they have no idea what they're talking about and they have no idea about theory. You've got to punish people who go against this stuff, right? This is the new religion. How dare you go against it? Normalizing sins. Yes. Yes, Gray Weaver, it's normalizing sins. So here's something interesting. We talked about this in book club last night, is there's so much about my old ideology, about social justice ideology, woke ideology, that doesn't make sense. And they use the second group in this, the queer activists, they use the ones who learn this stuff in school to go out and try to make sense of it, and to try to, we're the evangelists, we were the missionaries, but we tried to make it make sense for the normies that we were preaching it to. But there's so many questions they can't answer. I've posed some of those questions on this channel before, but one of them is this, and people brought it up in book club last night. So if your goal, and queer theory's goal, is to destroy all, and not just queer theory's goal, social justice goal is to destroy all norms, all traditions, anything that's considered normal and traditional, including the nuclear family, including heterosexuality, including these boundaries that we place on what is moral and ethical to do to children, or to allow children to do. They want to get rid of all of that. So what happens when you succeed? Because they've been succeeding. We now celebrate depravity every June. It's written into some of our laws. It's in our kids' curriculum at schools. So they are succeeding. They are making depravity and perversion normal. What happens then? Then do you now that that's the norm, you've built up a new norm, you try to tear that down? Because I don't think you are. I don't think you are. Once you destroy everything, once that's the norm, destruction, how do you flip it back? But it made me think of a couple things. So you guys may have seen these memes, like the memes about how to be a rebel, how to be punk rock in 2024 or 2023. I saw some of these last year. Is to be a monogamous, straight Christian married couple with kids. It's true though. Is to be a churchgoer and like pay your taxes and like pay your bills, do your lawn, make the bed every day. Like this is to be punk rock, to be a rebel today, right? To go against the norm, to go against the status quo. There's something really fun in that idea. I like those memes that are pointing that out. Here, before I get more into that, let me show you this, because I do want to show you this clip. Now, Judith Butler, she's mentioned a lot in both of these books, and rightly so. I read a lot of Judith Butler in college. She's one of the architects of this evil, one of the queer theorists, feminist theorists, Marxist theorists. This is a tweet from Isaiah Carter. And he says, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen, the evil matriarch of queer theory, flat out calling for a, quote, communist ontology. The ontology, the nature of being. So a communist ontology to eliminate the individual and expand the power of the state. Please understand, everything happening right now is all a part of what Theo Jordan calls the same thing. It is all a part of the same thing. And also, as James Lindsay often says, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. Social justice ideology, social justice, Marxists, woke, these communists, whatever you want to call them, they're using identity Marxism to push this destruction of society onto us, but they've used other things before. This is just what they're using right now. So they use all these different identity groups to push this destruction of society. They're using gay and lesbian people and trans, so-called trans people, people with gender dysphoria. They're using women. They use Black people. They use fat people. They use people with mental health issues. They're using these things to push communism. Here, let's listen to Judith Butler. Here she is talking to Cornel West.
The intensification of state powers and their surveillance mechanisms in particular, that we are no longer able to have that conversation, right? Put both values
That's
on the
true.
table.
But see, that's exactly what I mean by licentiousness, in terms of the ways in which personal liberty language is mobilized.
Yes.
For licentiousness.
Yes.
Because even John Stuart Mill, you got a harm principle.
Yes, you do have a harm principle.
There's no liberty without constraint.
Yeah.
There's no freedom without constraint.
I understand that.
Well,
it's one thing for me to say I must constrain myself in order not to do harm, and then I am still here in the position of the individual calculating what's harm, what's not, and he taught us how to calculate.
Right.
But there might be an ethics that's beyond calculation. In other words, I'm thinking about my life, which means others are thinking about it in the same way, and we are linked in this living world, on this planet, right? Which is why the interdependency that we need to understand to fight COVID is also the interdependency we need to understand to fight climate destruction.
I agree.
And so we need I would call it a communist ontology, quite frankly.
It's a solidarity that's thicker than any conception of
I
personal
think we
liberty.
need a radical social ontology. We need to rethink selfhood, its boundaries, its openings, to have a completely different ethics and a politics of care. So I'm pushing against the personal liberty folk right now.
Yeah, no,
sorry, I know that's extreme.
Straight from her mouth, against personal liberty, against personhood, selfhood, right? Against individualism, treating people as individuals rather than as group, like collective members. She outright says communist ontology. That we are a collective. This is in Marxism as well. This belief that we are best viewed as a collective, as not as individuals. Let's see if I can find one of these other quotes about that. I mean, I have so much underlined here that it's like I have so much underlined here that I'm like, wait, when you underline the whole book. Judith Butler, by the way, who we just saw, she's one of the ones who put forward the idea that children, everyone is born a blank slate, that we're all blank slates, and that we should program kids with what we want. Which, by the way, in book club last night, somebody pointed out, we've talked about John Money on this channel before, and the disgusting experiments he did with those two boys, those brothers, and how he thought he set out to prove that he could change someone's gender or sex through social construction, how it's all socially constructed. So he could raise this boy as a girl and tell this boy his whole life that he was a girl, and that the boy would believe it. And he also, you could go back and look for John Money and Deprogrammed. There's an episode about him in this channel as well. but he also forced these two brothers to engage in sexual activity together, and he took pictures of it. And this guy was an esteemed scientist and a researcher, a social scientist, right? Like, they held him up as an example. They said, he proved this. He didn't. Both of those brothers ended up killing themselves, by the way. It didn't work. I'm kind of at a loss on, there's so much in both these books. I really want you guys to go and get them and read them. I also want you to get the autobiography of Ben Franklin, so you're in the next book club. That'll be fun. But I think both of these sets of writers have done us a great service in putting this in a concise form, so you can read through it and understand it better. And I highly recommend both of them. The end goal is control, says long last name. Yes, it is. Well, and Marx, as they talk about in this book, because it was like a theology, so he believed that once we reached this place of creating ourselves, and think about how this relates to today, they are teaching children basically that they can change their physical body to manifest like their soul, what's on the inside, manifest it on the outside, change your physical body. And some of these kids really believe that they are actually changing their biological sex. They actually believe this, some of them. And then they come to find out they haven't, of course. But that you will see them posting. I see their posts on Reddit and stuff about, like, we've done all of this work only to be called trans women. We are women. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, kid. You're not. Still going to have to go in for that prostate exam. Like, you haven't changed anything about your biology. I don't care how much plastic surgery you've had and what kind of Frankenstein body parts you've cobbled together from your arm, or, the mutilation you've allowed them to do. Let me show you this post, since we're talking about that. This is the attitude I see from some of these young people online who are getting pulled into this. Also, they have lots of questions and worries and regret. I see a lot of posts in these Reddit forums where they go in and they're saying stuff like, has anyone else had the surgery and still, I saw one that was like, it was a young woman in her 20s who just got a fake penis made and stapled onto her body from cutting off all the skin around her arm, right? Has this Frankenstein skin tube hanging off herself. And she was posting something like, does anybody else still feel gender dysphoric? I still feel like I don't have, like, I still feel like I'm not a cis man. I still feel like I'm not a real man. I still feel like my penis isn't a real penis. Yeah, because it's not. Gosh, it's not. Because you're not. You're not a man. We are taking mentally ill people, and instead of helping them get better, all of the medical organizations in the country right now are saying, no, 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 your mental delusion is what's true and real. Now let's change your physical body to match that, and let's try and compel the people and the public through the force of law and the government to participate in your delusion with you. And even then, a lot of these young adults are like, it still isn't working. I still don't feel like a real man. Because you're not a real man, honey. You're not a man. there's a part in this book that talks about how high up all of this goes now, you know. Let's look at this part, gender bureaucracy. I'm reading from The Queering of the American Child. To better understand what happened at Windsor, this is going back to that all-girls school that says you can't say girl anymore, and you can't say ladies, and you can't say she or her, and you can't say your child, and you can't say parent. To better understand what happened there, we will look at another institution that introduced a confusing document in 2021, the U.S. Department of Education. The U.S. Department of Education, one of Jimmy Carter's worst legacies. The U.S. Department of Education, which didn't exist until 1980. The document, Supporting Transgender Youth in Schools, states that as, quote, as the Department of Education has reaffirmed, discrimination based on sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, what? Isn't just wrong, it's prohibited in America's schools. This is from our government. They're talking about something made up, which is gender identity, something that comes from queer theory, which is gender identity. One of the first people to use that phrase was John Money, that pervert I just told you about who was experimenting on young boys. This is our government using that phrase, gender identity. Including the term, this is Logan Lansing speaking now, including the term gender identity in a statement about sexual discrimination does not make any sense. According to the American Psychological Association, the APA, quote, gender identity is defined as an internal sense of being male, female, or something else, which may or may not correspond to an individual's sex assigned at birth or sex characteristics. Logan Lansing asks, what does an internal sense of one's sex or gender, quote, gender, have anything to do with the reality of one's sex? It doesn't. There are only two sexes, male and female. And a person's sex is observed at birth, not assigned. Do you see how they control language and they're controlling, just like I've pointed this out before, Orwell talked about this. If you want to control a people, you have to control their thoughts. How do you control their thoughts? By controlling language. And they've done a great job of that. Social justice and woke, they coin new terms all the time, like gender identity. They come up with new fake things like cis to train the way that we think as a people and to train the way young people think specifically, to indoctrinate. They come up with new terms. They also change the definition of long established terms like racism, like woman, like harm, like liberal. They change the meaning of these words, like a cult. Logan Lansing continues, how can sexual discrimination be reinterpreted to include discrimination against feelings rather than an essential characteristic? Whatever the reasoning, the message was clear. The United States Department of Education considers, quote, gender identity to be a protected category. A student's feelings about, quote, what they are on the inside, end quote, can no longer be questioned in America's schools. Supporting transgender youth in schools, which was this document put out by the Department of Education, it lists many new policies and practices that schools can consider developing to, quote, ensure that all students are safe and supported. There's safe, by the way, they love to use that word. The first recommendation is that schools use, quote, welcoming and inclusive, end quote, language. This is all cult speak. And that they commit to, quote, ensuring a safe and supportive campus, cult speak, that is free from discrimination and harassment for LGBTQ plus students, end quote. Shockingly, the U.S. Department of Education also recommends that schools adopt policies that, quote, respect students by allowing kids to use different names and pronouns while in school. Supporting transgender youth in schools goes as far as saying that schools should think about adopting model plans to guide school staff on how to support students in any transition process, end quote. Now listen to this. This is also a very interesting part of the book. This isn't just the U.S. Department of Education initiative. This, though it goes too far beyond the intention of this chapter or book to go into details, which would deserve several detailed chapters at the least, much of the sex, quote, gender, sexuality, and sexual education in schools all over the world today is there because of a broad program called Comprehensive Sexuality Education, CSE. CSE was originally developed in the early 2000s at the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, at the UN. And it is pushed to all member states from there as part of, quote, inclusive and global citizenship, end quote. Education, inclusive and global citizenship education. It is directly tied to using education to help achieve the United Nations Agenda 2030 Sustainable Developmental Goals. You guys know this. You know about 2030 if you watch this channel. A lot of the lefties joining us, you won't know anything about it. Maybe that's a rabbit hole you should go down today. After this video, go look up Agenda 2030. So this comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, is a part of the UN's Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, including goals number 4, quality education for all, and 5, gender equality, and several of the others. Comprehensive sexuality education includes, well, let me start at the beginning of this sentence. Reaching far beyond traditional sex education, which was predominantly medical and anatomical and focused on risk like pregnancy and disease prevention. That's what it used to be, sex ed. Gen X, when I was in school, that's what it was. Okay, going far beyond that, comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, includes as core curriculum topics on sex, quote, gender and sexuality, all deeply informed by queer theory. Alarmingly, it also includes as 2 of its 7 pillars, lessons on, quote, sexual citizenship. What does that sound like? Doesn't that sound like one of the quotes we read from Queer Theory about children? Sexual citizenship and, quote, pleasure-based sexual education. Pleasure-based sexual education, end quote. I'll stop there. You guys have to get this book. Okay. That's all. That's all. We're gonna take a break there. I showed the Judith Butler clip. We looked at the book Towards a Gay Communism. Let me show you this now. These are some of the real world effects of teaching, of destabilizing a child's identity and telling them that there's no such thing as normal and that they may have been assigned the wrong sex at birth. And here are some of the results of this cult on society. Here's a post that I saw. In one of these groups on Reddit. The title was "Women or People Who Identify as Women" is a phrase I hate. And this young person went on to write, I don't think it's intentional transphobia, probably more of a cis ignorance thing. And I bet it's the right label for some trans folks, but for me, as a trans woman, this is awful. It's like calling us pretenders. No, we don't do all this work. We don't risk our safety and comfort in public. We don't fight to the nail for our rights, just to be listed as women adjacent. No, we are women. Honey, you are a man. You can war with reality and biology and fact all that you want, but reality will win. It's not me you're warring with. It's not normal people you're warring with. You're warring with reality. It's like trying to war with gravity by jumping off a roof. The consequences of that are much faster. the consequences of warring with reality over, fighting against whatever your biological sex is, or it could be longer, but you're going to feel them. If you insist that you have magically changed your sex, you haven't. This person ends this with, this goes for all trans people. We identify as our gender like how a cis person would. We are that gender. No, I don't identify with any gender. There's no such thing as gender. This is Simone de Beauvoir, okay, in 1949, at the end of the beginning of second wave feminism. This is in the book as well. She was one of the feminist theorists who first, this is where you guys, you young TikTok, Reddit feminists or woke people, you don't know where any of this comes from. She's one of the ones who first said, hey, sex and gender are different things. We should start thinking about those things as different things. They're not. There's fashion. There's personality types and choices, characteristics. But I am not this whole made up thing that you guys want to do about like, oh, a cis person is someone whose gender matches their sex. No, it just is. I am a woman. There's no right way to be a woman. Now, I have some friends who have gender dysphoria who try and present as the opposite sex. They don't pretend that they've actually changed their biological sex. They're very aware they have a mental disorder, dysphoria, and uncomfortableness in their biological sex. They're very aware that they are trying to present as the opposite sex and live as the opposite sex, but they don't pretend like they've actually magically changed their sex. They don't. You can go watch one of the first interviews I did on this subject on this new channel was with my friend Sarah Higdon. You can go and watch that video. It's called Trans Women Are Not Women. We are doing young people a disservice by teaching them these lies. And reality is going to hurt them. I saw Chloe Cole, one of the detransitioners, one of the very public ones, very brave young woman who's suing the doctors, the hospitals, the big medicine who did this to her, who butchered her. She did a post a couple days ago. She said, it was so sad. She said, today marks the 4th anniversary since they took my breast from me, and I am 19 years old. So they did that to her when she was 15. Now, yeah, she chose it, right? She chose it, but she was a child. This is why we've always agreed in society children are not the same as adults, except for these queer theorists and feminist theorists. But we acknowledge children are not developmentally the same as adults. We don't treat them as if they're the same. The law protects them from harm and abuse, protects them from consenting to things they're not developmentally able to consent to. Mark, for $5, thank you for the super chat, Mark. Thanks for supporting Deprogram. Mark says, Mark's ideology, ego drama of self, will lead to chaos, opposed to union with the supreme drama of infinite goodness, truth and beauty of life in God. Yes. It's all about the self. So is Satanism. It's all about, do what thou will, not do God's will, but do what thou will. It's all about, me, I'm God, God, God. So is Marxism. Emo Trash says, us Christians are the absolute edgelords of punk culture. I love it. We are. I'm going to leave this on screen for a second because here's the thing. We have to start, because they're very explicit. Queer theory is about destroying normalcy and everything that's normal, everything that's traditional, which ultimately leads to a destruction of all of society and all of civilization. This is what social justice is about as well. all of social justice. And Pride is not about LGBTQ. They use that on the surface level. They make it about that so that if you call it out for what it is and oppose it, then they get to call you a bigot or a homophobe or whatever, even if you're gay, which I've seen them do. But they try and make it about that. This is just that they're just using gay people. That's a vector, just like they use women in feminism. They use black people. BLM uses black people. They're just using it. It's all Marxism. It's all communism. It's all destruction and evil. And it opposes normalcy. It's about upending everything that's normal. And so I was thinking about memes and messaging and culture and funny things, we could do. And this kind of grew out of book club last night. We were joking about it, but we were like, there should be like a normal appreciation month. I'm not going to call it pride because pride is a sin. It's not a virtue. It's not something to celebrate. But how about appreciation, right? An appreciation for normalcy month. How funny would that be? Now, you can't play their game. Don't play their game. I mean, on some memes I've seen say, like straight pride or whatever, but straight pride is like playing their game. They've already got you. They got you there now because now you're playing this game and pretending it's about sexuality or something. It's like if they get you to say the word cis in seriousness. There was a show I was on. It was the Jubilee show. Maybe some of you guys saw that. It was a panel show where you go and you have discussions with people who disagree with you. And I went out to Los Angeles for that. But in the leading up to it, there was this informational form you had to fill out. And they were kind of like a very woke production company. And they had a whole list of choices for my gender. It was like, I am male, female, trans, non-binary, agender, two-spirit. Like there were seriously like 20 options. And then at the bottom, other, and you put it in there. And I just put other, normal. And also like they had one that was like, are you cis, trans, or other? And I put other, normal. And then it said, what are your pronouns? And they want you to play the game and put, like, I'm not going to say cis because that's that's freaking made up. I'm not going to say that. You're playing the game. That's not a thing. I am normal. And so I put normal. And then when it came to pronouns, they said, what pronouns do you prefer? They wanted everyone to answer this. And I just put, you figure it out. You figure it. I'm not playing this game where I tell you, we don't live in a world where where it's necessary to tell each other we've never lived in that world. They're trying to make this a thing. It's not a thing. We have always figured it out. I'm sure you will figure it out. So no, I'm not playing the game. So I think the people who are trying to do like straight pride, I think that's misguided. I think I get it. I appreciate the effort, but I think it's a little misguided. I think they got you. You kind of like playing the game. You have to break out of their game entirely. So I think I like normal appreciation month because that's really calling attention to what they're doing. It's not the surface level trick of this is about sexuality. No, this is about normal people and degenerates and perverts and people who want to, Marxists and people that want to destroy society. So this is a little silly thing I made. You can make your own. I saw some people saying, I don't like the list. Okay, put your own on the list. We're going to take a vote. All the normals, hello normals. I just made this really quick. You can make your own. I said, July is Normal Appreciation Month. Here are some things that normal people and their allies can do to appreciate and celebrate normalcy this month. Now, it's kind of funny because these are things also for, some of these things are to encourage degenerates to, hey, here's how you can practice being normal for like a month. So like pay your bills is on here. These are things, a part of this is funny because some people were like, these are things I do every day. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you're normal. Okay, so here we go. Here are things normal people and their allies can do to appreciate and celebrate normalcy this month. Number one, make at least one home-cooked meal a day. Now, some of my friends who are normal said this is a little much. They have to rely on leftover. Well, leftovers count. They're from a previous homemade meal that you made. But I think let's aim for at least one home-cooked meal a day, even if it's leftovers. You can aim for that in July. And maybe you're super traditional and one of the parents stays home or the adult stays home, maybe the wife stays home, and you make all the meals, which is amazing. So maybe you're like, oh, no big whoop, I got that. But some of you are like, this is a lot. Okay, well, maybe it should be practice for you and me too, for both of us. Okay, here's another. Eat your dinners with family or friends around the dinner table with no devices to interfere with conversation. Eat your dinners with family or friends around the dinner table. My husband, he's a musician. He told me he was performing at a gig where this one was a restaurant, and this family came in and they had like 3 young kids, and the entire meal, all 5 of them, including the 3 young kids, were on their phones. And one of the kids was like watching a show. And even when the food came, they were like, the kid was like shoveling spaghetti in his mouth and was on his phone. And none of them said a word to each other for the whole entire meal. You've got an 8-year-old occupied with a device and a 10-year-old occupied with a device and a preteen occupied with a device, and both parents occupied with devices. The whole meal. There's something wrong with this. Very, 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 very wrong with this. Very wrong. And I'm not indicting, if you feel convicted, well, I'm indicting myself too. I'm not indicting anyone, it's not like this is just an other problem. If you follow me on social media, you know how often I'm online. But so some of these are rules that we try to do so that we stay off the phone. Like we all have rules about, turn the phone off at dinner, or sit and have a conversation. I probably need to institute a rule. We're probably getting to the point where we need to have more of the dinners at the table again. It's just we're in the middle of construction. It's kind of crazy because we have everything from our music parlor in there right now, until the floors are finished. But anyway, we've been eating too many of our meals in front of the television. We've been watching John Adams, and we've been eating too many of our meals in front of the television. So once we get the rooms put back together and the dining table we can get to it again, I think we'll have to go back to a rule of like, let's eat dinner at the dinner table and discuss. So maybe July, if you feel convicted, hey, good. So do I. I put a couple things on here to convict myself, and a couple things are funny. Okay. So eat your dinners with family or friends around the dinner table with no devices to interfere with conversation. Here's some more things that allies can do to practice being normal with us during Normal Month. Take social media and devices away from your kids who are under the age of 14 for the month. Why not try it? Now, I had some based friends who were like, that's not nearly enough. You should take it away for good. Like I have friends who do not allow their children to have devices. I really admire those friends. And to those friends, bravo. But I'm trying to put on here, start small. For some people, it might be very unusual to take it away just for a month. Why not try it though? What a radical experiment to see. Your kid's going to be fine without it for a month. I just, why not try it? They can tell their friends they're going on vacation. They won't have access. It's a home vacation. Their weirdo normal parents are making them go on a retreat, a family retreat of getting back to the basics, and they're not going to have social media for a month. It's kind of like when people announce they're leaving, on social media. I'm going to be gone for a month, just so everybody knows, right? Why not try it? Maybe do it for yourself too. Again, convicting myself here. Okay, here's another one. Get outside for a physical activity once a day, even if just for a walk. Now, some of my fellow Texans are like, Keri, do you know how hot it is and how hot it's about to get? I do. So maybe early in the morning or in the evening. We can't take our dog Tiger for a walk during the middle of the day anymore because it's way too hot. But, the morning, it's still humid, but at least it's cooler. Here's one that's inspired by Jordan Peterson. Make your bed every morning. Hey, why? This is really actually convicting for a lot of leftists. It is. I know, because I used to be one. These little things are important. You don't have any structure without something. Like if you're having trouble with organization, I say this as a person who experiences trouble with organization and, have tried to get that more under control. And one of the things I started doing was making my bed every morning after I read that. Jordan Peterson saying, I was like, that makes sense. Keep your room, keep your surroundings in order, keep the chaos at bay. You start with little things like this. And I know a lot of you leftists, because you're my people, where I've come from, I know how much trouble you have with order in your home. And also I know how much trouble you have with your mental disarray, being depressed and anxious. And a lot of that is compounded by a cluttered home, a home that's not orderly. So this is one little thing you can do. Make your bed every morning. Here's one. Now it's my list, so I'm going to put on here what I want for normies. To be normal, to be a rebel, which by the way, being normal is weird now. It's weird and rebellious now. So we're the normals. The normals are the weirdos and the rebellious ones. And this is my list. So I'm putting on here what's most rebellious. What's most rebellious to this queer Marxist religion is Christianity. So I put go to church every Sunday. Now, if you're a non-believer and you're like, ugh, Keri, but why not try it? When I first started going to different churches, and I never thought I would, I went to all different kinds of churches. It was fascinating. I went to a Catholic church. I went to a cowboy church where the preacher was on a horse. You can find it. Why not? Go see, go see. So go to church every Sunday. Visit a few different ones if you don't have a church. Go with an open mind. Here's another one. Say prayers of gratitude out loud every night. If you have a spouse, take turns saying them together. This is a good practice, I'm telling you. And some of my non-believer friends have asked for advice on how to pray or how to start praying if they don't necessarily believe yet, but they would like to believe. Well, you can practice praying. And easy prayers to do are gratitude prayers. So you just say, here's what I'm grateful for. Neuroscientists have shown in studies that if you say what you're grateful for, if you speak it out loud, it elevates your mood. So even if you don't believe in God, what can it hurt to try it? Maybe you don't speak it to a God if you don't believe in God. Maybe you just say out loud, here's what I'm grateful for. You can see this in some secular people, for example, say you should keep a gratitude journal. That's because they're looking at the science. It says it's good for you. It's good for you to be grateful and to voice it out loud. So that's a good practice. Take turns saying them together if you have a spouse. Here's a funny one. Pay your bills. If you want to celebrate normalcy, pay your bills. Here's another one. Read a book. Let's get back to book reading. I said that because books are on my mind, right? I was referring to 2 books today. We had book club last night. Read a book. And if you want to join us, we're going to be doing next book club for Deprogrammed is July 18th, a Thursday. And we're going to be discussing the autobiography of Ben Franklin. Go and get it. Be a weirdo. Be a rebel. You're going to be the only person among your friends who's reading the autobiography of Ben Franklin. Like, what an edgelord. Do you know what I mean? How counterculture are you? None of those morons, the woke left, like they don't, by the way, they don't read. They like to pretend they're smarter than everyone else. They don't read. I know this. They're all running around dressed like handmaids. None of them have read The Handmaid's Tale. They all like to reference Orwell, but they've never read 1984. They've never read Huxley's Brave New World. They just talk about these things. Fakers, posers. So be different than them. Read a book. Learn one new thing. You should always be learning something. I said that because yesterday I was Garden Tube is like the kindest part of YouTube, I think. And I was watching Garden Tube because I was trying to figure out what to do with this blueberry plant that we have. Go learn something. Learn how to plant a blueberry bush. You can find all kinds of stuff on YouTube. I'm about to cut some 3/4 rounds after this video. I have to go stain them for the floor. And I'm going to go to YouTube and make sure I cut it right. You know, like you can learn anything on there. So go learn something new. And then the last one, drink more water. That's good for everyone. It's normal. It's something good to do. It's something we don't do enough of. Again, I'm convicting myself. I need to drink more water. So I put that on there. Now, then I added an announcement because I got a lot of petitions on things to add to this. And you should, please feel free to add to it. In the comments on this post, if you follow me, put it there. If not, make your own, put it up. So people were petitioning like, hey, and so I made an announcement, breaking announcement, thanks to Joe. Breaking announcement, normal people wish to amend the list of things below that allies can do to practice normalcy to include return your shopping carts to the corrals. Normal people, we like to return our shopping carts to the corrals so that they don't hit other people's vehicles, so that you can practice normalcy by doing that. Some other people suggested adding to the list of things to do during Normalcy Appreciation Month. Pull your pants up like around your waist where they go, so we don't have to see your underwear and you don't look like a slob. Like wear a belt. You can wear a belt for the month of July to celebrate normalcy. You know, there's all kinds of things. Make your own list. Make your own list, add to it. Mark says, be radical. Book reading, God talking, home cooking, bill paying, bed making, hippies. Yes, we are. We're radical, book reading, God talking, home cooking, bill paying, bed making hippies. We are. We are the counterculture. This is all counterculture today, isn't it? Reading a book is counterculture today. Keri's about to tell people to clean their rooms. Yeah, Jordan Peterson, right? True. Clean your room. Clean your frickin' room. Dress more modestly. Bring back decorum. Alex Lindstrom says, for $9.99, says, Normal People Month actually includes a lot of gay people. It does. No one's going to throw a gay Christian conservatives for traditional marriage pride. Not going to happen. No. No, I had several gay friends in the comments on that normal post, and they were like, you know, I feel this. Pride doesn't represent me. I pay my bills. I read books. I make my bed. I go outside. Okay. Don't wear pajamas and slippers in public. Thank you, Therese. I agree. Thank you. Observe nature. Yes. Dose dust. Yes, nature. Okay. People are saying, gotta go. F&T starting. F&T is starting. And I'm going to see those guys. I'm going to see Geeks and Gamers, and I'm going to see Ripiverse, all the folks who are going to be in Dallas tomorrow for Fan Expo. I'm going to make it down there. I'm very excited I get to go. I didn't think I was going to get to go this year, but I'm going. So I hope to see some of you there. If you see me, come up and say hello. It's fun. I love to meet people. And any other announcements? Yeah, the Ben Franklin book, July 18th. If you want to be a part of book club, you can get that book and start reading it now. And it's very interesting. I would say it's like Jordan Peterson's part of it is because he wrote this list of 13 virtues. It's like Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life before Jordan Peterson. You know, it's the OG, the 13 virtues of Ben Franklin. So go get that, and I hope you'll join us. Thank you, guys. Kendra says, thanks for being normal, Keri. Thank you for being normal, Kendra. And by the way, normal is the new weirdo. So we're also weirdos. It's cool. See you guys on Monday. I'll be back at the regular time, 1 o'clock Central. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you then. Okay, bye-bye.